Hi, my name is Victoria Lougheed, and I work for Family Caregivers of British Columbia. Today, I'm going to talk to you about grief as a universal experience. Every human being has or will experience grief at some point in their lives. It's part of what makes us human. The role of caregiving can be all encompassing, and when a care recipient passes away, it can lead to complex feelings and mixtures of feelings, including loneliness, emptiness, and loss. It's often an extremely emotional and uncertain time following the death of a care recipient because while the grief is intense and uncomfortable, we often try to find ways to avoid feeling the overwhelming sensations through distraction or staying busy. There isn't one way to grieve the loss of a person you cared for. Grief is an individual process. From our Caregivers Out Loud podcast conversation with Tricia Wallace, who is a clinical counselor, she shares some of the more common feelings and questions that accompany loss and grief of a care recipient. These include guilt, anxiety, and depression. When a care recipient has died, it's not uncommon for a caregiver to find relief in that. If the care recipient was in pain, they may be relieved that this person is no longer suffering. A caregiver may also feel relief from not being in the demanding caregiving role. It can even be a relief if the caregiving situation was an uncomfortable or unpleasant one, if there weren't good feelings between the caregiver and the care recipient. Sometimes their passing can be a relief. Relief, however, can quickly turn into guilt for feeling relief, and ruminating thoughts may arise around, could I have done more? Should I be feeling this way? These feelings can manifest in different ways, and each of them has a very physical presence with anxious thinking or worrying, lethargy, and depression. If you're feeling overwhelmed and concerned about your own grief process or feelings, I strongly encourage you to seek professional support for that. Other feelings include loneliness and a loss of identity. Caregiving is a something that we do out of love and sacrifice very often. We give our time, we give so much of our lives in that process of caregiving. It's a demanding role. It can be all encompassing, and this can sometimes leave less time and space for social connections and outings beyond the caregiving relationship with the care recipient. Following their passing, suddenly there's an opening of time and space, and it can often feel a bit like a void that opens before you. You may feel a sense of loss of purpose and loss of focus, and you may feel even more isolated with now no one to focus your time and attention on. Without someone to care for, a caregiver may feel confused and without a sense of usefulness. This can cause intense feelings of loneliness. In the Caregivers Out Loud podcast, Grief as a Human Experience, Tricia speaks about building up an island around yourself, like the all encompassing ocean like feelings of grief. What you want to do when you're forging this island in the ocean is think of small rituals and connections with others and lifelines that you can turn to cope with the grief. And then slowly, a step at a time, rebuilding emotionally after caregiving ends. Emotional and spiritual healing is a gradual process, and there are valuable practices that can support a caregiver's healing during this time of recovery and self discovery. At Family Caregivers, we offer some considerations to support your healing, including engaging in some restorative activities and rituals. These can be small and simple acts that allow you to remember and cherish the memories of your care recipient. Rituals are routines that are driven by the intention and imbued with meaning. Rituals ease us through challenging transitions and create a code for handling them. They can provide grounding, reassurance, and stability. Many people know and practice the more formal public displays of bereavement, such as funerals, wearing black, for a period following a death, or religious and cultural customs and practices. These public mourning rituals allow people to gather around the bereaved and to provide support and strength in a very challenging time. Personal, private, and emotionally moving rituals are also very sacred and can provide a place of solace and connection to their lost care recipient. Many caregivers have shared that they perform their own private rituals often. They can start to regain their footing in a new reality that feels a little emptier than it was before, but they've begun to find some grounding. These are examples caregivers have shared, watching a weekly favorite show and remembering their loved one during this time, singing or listening to a song that they both enjoyed, or talking and connecting with them on a regular walking route you both took. These rituals and activities can bring you a sense of peace and connection as you go through the grief process and rediscover yourself. Pause and consider what rituals or activities could support you in a challenging transition like death and grief. Are there any rituals that have been passed on in your family? Do you follow any religious or spiritual practices? Are there any new rituals or activities that are meaningful to you that you would like to try? Another important piece is to acknowledge and allow your feelings to flow. Grief is a unique journey and it brings a large range of emotions. Quite often, caregivers ask, am I doing this right? Is this normal? It can feel like a confusing experience with emotional challenges day to day, even moment to moment. Be gentle with yourself. Acknowledge the feelings that arise: sadness, anger, fear, relief, and let yourself feel it. We often try to bypass the hard and intense emotions. However, they only present themselves in different ways, often louder ways, at another time. Be honest with yourself and your emotions during this time of healing. Take a time out from the feelings of sadness. Trisha mentioned the breaker switch can go off in the body and mind when you may need a break. Grief is exhausting. It's okay to give yourself time to pause and take a break from grief by taking a walk, watching a movie with a friend, going to a favorite bookstore. It may help to take your mind away from your sadness for a time. It's okay to embrace and find some pleasure and enjoyment during this time. And lean on your circle of care. You may have had friends, family, and community members that supported and assisted you during your caregiving journey. They can continue to be a great source of support and connection in your grieving process. Although friends and family members may not be able to relate to the emotions you're experiencing, you may find comfort in being able to share with and depend on them during this time. You may also want to join a caregiver support group, a grief support group, or seek support from a clinical counselor or therapist. I want to thank you for taking a moment to watch this leaning in, and just know that we will have future leaning ins coming in the months down the path. If you're looking for resources or information, you can find them on the Family Caregivers website in the Learning Center. Look under Watch or Read or Listen for our podcast. Take care.